Today I'm going to be doing a chit chat, get ready with me. I'm going to be telling you a few things that have been going on in my life, some good, some challenging, shall we say. It's not a cry for pity or any of that sort. I will explain as we get further into it, but it's just an opportunity to share a little bit of me with you guys. So I've got my I solemnly swear a lot shirt on. Seems appropriate for the situation. But before we get into the video, I want to welcome you back to my channel, or if you are new here, then welcome. My name is Kara. I am a 40-year-old professional with 2 kids and a massive love of makeup. On my channel, we like to mix beauty, brains with the occasional F-bomb. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, just keep watching. As per usual, as I do this, I'm not going to be talking about the products or showing them or anything like that, but everything will be listed in the description box down below. I just get too mired down in talking about the products and then I get myself distracted, and we're just all here for altogether way too long if I do that. So just going to go ahead and get started with primer. Before I really dive into anything, I guess the reason why I wanted to just sit down and chat with you guys is because it's really easy to kind of fall victim to the thinking that what we see on social media is the complete reality, where that's not the case. You know, we look at people's Instagram feeds and they are curated collections of pictures. They are selected out of God only knows how many shots were taken. They are staged to capture certain things. Like, in particular, I'm thinking about lifestyle kind of accounts where everything just looks pristine and perfect and the kids are always smiling and the moms always look so well put together and happy and caffeinated, and that's not real life. And even though objectively I know that that's not reality, I think because we're just presented with this sort of wall of perfection everywhere we look, it can sort of wiggle its way in. And even at my age, and even knowing what I know about the fact that this is a curated set of pictures and all that kind of thing, I can still find myself sort of wondering what I'm doing wrong, why that's not my life, why somebody else has this image of perfection and yet I'm firmly on the struggle bus. And so I wanted to just sort of sit down and just talk about some real life things in my life. Some are really positive, some are not, but hopefully that just sort of gives you a glimpse into my reality. And I don't think anybody could accuse me of being perfect, that's for sure. I most definitely am not. For what it's worth, if anybody else is also on the struggle bus, I just want you to know that there's an open spot available beside me. You can come sit with me, because I'm riding that bus too. And like I said, some things are positive and some things are a little bit more of a challenge. So I will talk about, let's talk about the positive. So as most of you know, I own my own business with a partner. And what's really exciting for us is that we're growing, and business is sort of booming right now, to be honest. We're getting a lot of calls for people looking for consultations, and things are really picking up, which is fantastic because especially during the early parts of COVID, it was a little bit up in the air. But also in the early parts of COVID, we were scheduled to move our office and we weren't able to until now. So we now have a moving date for our office for mid-November. Less than a full month away. We're moving on Friday the 13th because we like to tempt fate, I guess. And it's very exciting for us. The office that we are currently in, we never expected that we would outgrow it as quickly as we did. And it only has 2 actual offices, and then it has a really large main area. But we now have 3 lawyers working there, and so we rotate. So our associate kind of goes back and forth between the 2 offices, and every 3rd day we all take a turn being out of the office, which frankly I don't object to. I do enjoy that part of it, but our associate deserves his own office. And with business being as busy as it is, we have now also hired another lawyer. So he will start in December, which is so exciting. It's so exciting, and we're really excited about the person that we hired. You know, we were really impressed with him during the interview process and the interactions that we've had with him since. I think he's just going to be a really great fit for our firm, which is really important because it is so small that if you have one personality that just doesn't gel, it ruins it for everybody so quickly, and that's not the environment that we want to go to work to every day. So in a few weeks, we're going to be moving our office, and then 2 weeks after that, we're going to have another lawyer joining us. I mean, this exceeds the wildest dreams of my partner and I. Like, when we made the decision to open this business together, we always just kind of assumed it would be the two of us. Like, we never talked about having associates and hiring and all this kind of thing. It's kind of surreal for us. Like, we have no aspirations of being like a huge firm with satellite offices and all this kind of thing, but we've doubled our lawyer capacity, and that's just within 4 years. Like, it's shocking to us, but it's amazing. My partner and I are going to be registering for a full mediator course in the spring, so that we can add that to our roster of services as well. And it's something we've been talking about for quite some time. It'll allow us to take a break from litigating and will allow us to just learn something new and, like I said, expand the services that we offer. So we're really excited about that. We've been talking about it forever, and now we're finally going to go ahead and do it. And I'm so excited. I really would like to add that to my skill set, because all litigation all the time, it really does get tiring. And while I do help people negotiate agreements as well, and we stay out of court, I like the idea of just like assisting people in their own discussions, like from a non-partisan perspective. I think that'll be a nice change of pace for me. So I was talking about this in my recent live stream with Barry, how it can really get to be a lot sometimes, like carrying other people's worries and concerns and problems. And that's the nature of the job. That's what I signed up for, and I don't begrudge my clients that for sure. But all that to say is that at the end of the day, I am a person doing a job, and sometimes just carrying the weight of multiple other people's problems can be hard. And last week in particular, it all kind of came to a head for me, because it was just sort of like, you know, my professional life, my personal life, everything just sort of crashed all together, and I couldn't hold the plate anymore. There was just too much on it. So I have mentioned in previous videos, but I'll repeat it again here. I was adopted by my grandparents as a child. So when I was born, like when I left the hospital, I went to their house. I've always lived with my grandparents. So the people that I refer to as my mother and father are biologically my grandparents, but I call them my mother and father because that's the role that they played in my life. And my mother is 88 years old, bless her. My father passed away 17 years ago, so that's a whole other story. But my mother is 88 years old, and with that comes obviously a whole, holy, this blush is strong, oh my goodness. With that comes a whole host of issues, right? So she lives about 2 hours away from me, so getting to see her is not always the easiest thing, particularly with work and kids, because it is basically a full day adventure. And she wants desperately to live with me, and we've done that before. And my mother and I have a challenging relationship. I'm not going to get too far into it because that's not fair to her. Now, she does reside in a seniors residence. It's not a care home or anything of that sort, but they do have an assisted living program for those who qualify. And towards the end of September, my mother ended up having to get taken to the hospital because she, hadn't been feeding herself, was quite weak, and a whole host of other things. And ultimately she stayed in the hospital for about a week. They ran a whole battery of tests. They didn't determine any like underlying medical issues or anything of that sort. So they sent her home, but part of that release process was that she was going to be put on this assisted living program. I mean, that in and of itself was very concerning to me, because if I could find my highlighter brush, that would be fantastic. There it is. Because, again, I'm 2 hours away, and if my mother's not taking her medication, some of which are related to her heart, that's scary for me. She lives alone, and if anything happens to her, like, how's anybody going to know? So I'm very grateful that she is now on this assisted living program. However, she was on it for about a week, and she had canceled 2 of the visits already. And part of the program is that you won't do that, because otherwise they could just provide this service to somebody else who's not going to cancel. So I went to visit her on Thanksgiving Monday. Here in Canada, we celebrate in October instead of November. And I had a chat with her about all of that kind of thing and helped her fill out some forms and all this. And I had to have the conversation with her again that she's not going to come and live with me. And I had to say it point blank, because she just kept bringing it up and just kept saying, like, I think her plan honestly was that she would get herself kicked off of the assisted living program, and then she'd have no choice but to come and live with me. And so I had to say that that's not going to happen. And like I said, there's a long history, there's a lot of dynamic, but I don't want to get into the specifics of it here, because this isn't the sphere for it, and it's way too public of a platform to do that here. That's not fair to her, and I'm not going to do that. But I had to have that conversation with her, and part of her care was that they had provided her with a walker, because she is prone to falling, and she hadn't been using her walker. Hold. So I had to have the conversation with her of, well, you know, if they feel that you need the walker for your own safety, then you got to use the walker. And apparently walkers are for old people. So no, we can't be doing that, because that's only for old people. Bearing in mind she's 88 years old, so I'm not quite sure where the threshold is, but apparently she hasn't reached it yet. And I also had to talk to her about her medic alert, because she has one, but she doesn't wear it. And I asked her where it was, and she told me it was in the cupboard. And I was like, well, how much good is it doing for you there? To which the response was, none, but I don't like the way it looks. So that was sort of the tone of the conversation. And I mean, it wasn't a negative conversation. We weren't yelling at each other or anything like that, but it was just one of those where I kind of had to treat her like my child, really. And that in and of itself is just odd. It's just a very weird role reversal, and it's something that I haven't fully gotten used to at all at this point. Confession time. I just talked the entire time that I was doing this, but I hadn't pressed record. Love that for me. So I'm not entirely sure where I left off after finishing up the face makeup. So if I've missed a chunk, I apologize. But what I think the next thing was to inform you that about 5 hours after I left my mother's house on on Thanksgiving, she had a fall. She was in her apartment. She was not using her walker. She did not have her medic alert button anywhere near her. And my 88-year-old mother had to drag herself across the floor to her door and pound on it and scream until her neighbor came to see what was going on and to call 911 for her, because she wasn't able to reach her phone because she couldn't stand up. That was on October 12th. As I'm filming, it's the 19th, and she's still in hospital. And there is no estimation at this point in terms of when she'll be released. It's just a wait and see kind of moment. She sounds to be in good spirits, but a lot of times she puts on a bit of a facade for me. I guess she doesn't want to worry me, except sometimes when she does want to worry me, but we're not going to get into that. So, like I said, she lives 2 hours away, and the hospital, in response to the pandemic, has their own rules in terms of visiting, and it's tied to the room number. So if she's in an even numbered room, then visitors can go on even numbered days, and the opposite. And it just turned out that all the days that I could go and visit in the last week or so, I either had court already scheduled or other things, other commitments that I couldn't get out of. And also with their visitor restrictions, patients can have only 2 people on a visitor list, only one of which can visit at a time, and those 2 people have to remain consistent. So it's not like just one cousin can go visit her and then another time I can go and then Barry can go and then somebody else. It has to be the same 2 people only. And other family members do live a lot closer to her, but they're not me. And so it's just the sense of guilt, right? Where I want to say to my family, like, hey, can you help me out with this? Can you go visit her? Can you be there for her? But I'm her daughter, you know? So it weighs on me. And when I called the hospital on Friday last week, I just wanted to see what was going on. I wanted to confirm what had happened. I mean, there'd already been discussion, but they were still doing diagnostics all throughout the week. And they confirmed that it was not a fracture. They thought that she had fractured her pelvis, but it turns out it's just basically severe soft tissue damage, which is no picnic, but I'm glad that it's not a fracture. But in speaking with the nurse, she informed me that my mother has been very resistant to the physiotherapy, and physiotherapy is what's going to help her heal. And I was just so frustrated. It was just one more instance of my mom just not doing what she needs to do. And I can't imagine what it's like to be 88 and having people come in to help you shower, and that loss of privacy and that loss of independence, and somebody saying, hey, you need to use this walker, something you've always associated with quote unquote old people. But I was just so frustrated. Like, I just wanted to shake her, because I'm like, do you want to stay in the hospital forever, or do you want to get out of here? Like, what do you want to do? And that, on top of everything else that has been going on, I broke, and I spent a good half hour or so just crying in my office. And thankfully my friends got me through that. And then not only do I have medical concerns for her, but I have these ongoing medical concerns for my son Bennett, who's about 3.5 years old now. And I've talked about him. I have full dedicated videos on this, but I will give a very brief recap here. He has a condition called hemihyperplasia, and it basically just means that for him, it's specific to his left leg. His left leg is growing faster than the rest of his body. And while it's not restrictive on him, it's not painful for him or anything of that sort, it does carry with it some pretty gnarly side effects. So when he's about 13 years old, he's going to require surgery to fuse his growth plate in his left leg so that the rest of his body can catch up to it. If they don't do that, they're able to determine already what the discrepancy is going to look like, and it will be significant, and he will be at a fairly high risk for scoliosis and all sorts of other issues. The more concerning part is that because this is a genetic thing, and just because of the mutation and all this kind of thing, it has an increased risk of him developing cancer, specifically kidney or liver cancer. So in order to improve the chances of detecting any issues, he has to undergo a full abdominal ultrasound every 3 months, along with a blood test that looks for a certain protein in his blood that would indicate the growth of the presence of tumors. And every time we do those scans, my heart is in my throat. And fairly good reason. A couple of ultrasounds ago, I took him to his ultrasound. It was in the morning. And the tech told me that we'd get the results in about 48 hours. Not, I'd say, 4 hours later, my doctor's office called me and told me that the doctor needed to see us about Bennett's results before the end of that week. And they didn't have an opening to see us for 2 days. And the person who called to make the appointment with us couldn't tell us what the issue was or anything of that sort. And so for 2 days, Barry and I were basically convinced that we were going to find out that our son had cancer. And it was terrifying. And it turns out that he did not have cancer, thank God. But his kidney, one of his kidneys, is growing a little bit faster. Or at least is larger than what they expect it to be. That's it. The kidney is larger. And it's nothing that requires any further investigation. It's something that they've notified his team at Sick Kids in Toronto about, and they'll keep an eye on it, but it's no cause for alarm. And Barry and I both broke down in tears. We were so relieved. And the physician's assistant was like, I just gave you good news. What is this? And we had to explain to her that having to wait 2 days while we assumed the worst was torture on us. We thought that we were going to find out that day that our son had cancer. So she promised us, moving forward, that if she ever needs to review any results with us, that she would call us directly and tell us right there over the phone. And thankfully for his last scans, which happened just the day before I talked to the nurse about my mom, we haven't heard anything. So fingers are crossed. And then 3 months from now, we'll do it all over again. And we will do that until Bennett is at 6, the ultrasounds can stop, and at 8, the needles can stop. These lashes, by the way, are magnetic. The liner is the magnet, and they're so easy to use. They are linked down below, slightly different style than what I'm wearing. I couldn't find this style exactly, but so impressed. So those are the things that have been good and bad in my life lately. Now, before we finish this out, we gotta do something about the lips. So in the live stream, I was wearing this liquid lipstick here. It's from Pat McGrath, but when I was doing my description box for that, I looked everywhere for liquid lipsticks from Pat McGrath, and I don't think she makes them anymore. So I brought out some alternatives, nothing that's quite the same, but I do have some alternatives to show. Alright, so this is a shade that I wore in the live stream. It's called Nightshade. It's from Pat McGrath. This one below it, obviously these are not all the same. They're not dupes at all, but this one here is called Boss Lady. It's from Gerard Cosmetics. This one here is from MAC, and it's called Antique Velvet. And then down here, the black is from Juvia's Place, and it is called Doo Doo. D-U-D-U. Okay, so I am going to apply the Pat McGrath simply because I'm recreating the look and this is what I wore. I had no idea that they had been discontinued, but here we are. Alright, so there is the completed look with the really deep purple lip. I think this eye look would look great with like one of the deep reds that I showed, or even the black, or you could just go with like a neutral lip and just let the eyes stand out as they are, but I just love fall vampy looks. I love it, so here we are. But thank you for allowing me to share a little bit of my life with you, and I don't mean this to be like a pity party. That's not what I'm looking for at all, but like I said at the beginning, we all have challenges in our lives, and it's so easy to get caught up in the social media facade of perfection, and this channel is absolutely not about perfection whatsoever. I like to keep it real. I like to be transparent with you guys. So me just sharing these little bits with you it's just that. It's just me trying to show you guys that even though you might see me on here and I'm usually pretty chipper and happy and upbeat and all this kind of thing, when the camera's off, it's not always like that. It's not always rainbows and puppies, you know. Sometimes there's an elderly mother who refuses to take her medication, and it can be really hard. So, to all of you, just know that I get it, because we all have struggles and we all have challenges. They don't always look the same, but they're just as heavy for everybody, and I get it. And for what it's worth, I just want you to know that I'm sending you strength. So, with that said, I'm going to wrap this video up here. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch, and I will see you in my next one. Until then, just be a decent human being. Bye for now.